So welcome to another, hi you. You want to say hi? You want to be pissed off at the camera? So welcome to another Thursday on the Pagan Perspective. I'm Yeka, your host, and that was Moose, the ruler of this house. So this week we have been talking about prayer and the use of prayer in pagan practices. Lots of P's there. So our topic comes from Wyld Silverwolf, and they write, 1. The usage of prayer in pagan practice. 2. Do you now or have you ever said/used prayer in your practice? 3. What, in your opinion, could someone who is not in the broom closet but not fully outed themselves yet to do to incorporate prayer not only into their practice but into their daily life? My reason for asking is I have been thinking about saying prayers before each meal at work, because it is a discreet way to practice. And while looking on the internet, I have noticed a vast majority of the prayers there are for younger ages. Even these simple prayers for children could be used by a person of any age. Any thoughts, comments, or suggestions would be helpful. So, the first thing to talk about, I think, is what are we counting as prayer? And that's one of those delightful topics, like so many that we talk about here on the Pagan Perspective, where you're going to get a very different answer from different people. Different pagans are going to answer different, but different Christians as well, and I'm bringing up Christians because that's what comes to mind often when one talks about prayer. The answer that you're going to get from a Catholic is going to be different from a different Catholic, is going to be different to what you might get from a Baptist or from a Quaker or from all of these different kinds. And as I was saying, each individual is going to relate to it differently. When I think about prayer, for me, prayer is another form of ritual. I don't call what I do prayer. I just call it ritual and intention setting and that sort of thing. But I really do think that if we talk about prayer as a poem which somebody recites, like the Serenity Prayer for instance, that is a small little ritual. It's a little piece of intention that somebody is putting out there. If one is to use prayer in more of the Quaker sense in terms of sort of communing with God or the Holy Spirit or anything like that, or even the tradition of holding someone in the light, that is also spell work. It's intention setting, it's connecting with, speaking to a part of yourself that doesn't necessarily communicate on this very forward logical part of our brains that we're, consciousness that we're really used to operating in. So that, I think about, that's what I think prayer is. In terms of, do I use prayer in my practice? Well, as I mentioned, I do use ritual, and I do very much do intention setting. And in terms of poems, there were cute little phrases, I guess, that I used, like when I was first starting to drive. I would tell my car, keep me well, keep me safe on this journey that I take. But I moved out of that for a very conscious reason. And I used to say the Serenity Prayer a lot too, actually, just kind of leaving the word Lord out. And the reason was that for me, it seemed like I was giving away a little bit of my power or responsibility. Instead of recognizing that I was the one making these choices, I was saying, hey, other car, you protect me, or Lord, you protect me. I was asking for something as if I didn't have the power to do it myself. or as if it was something that there was power to be had over. And so I chose not to use prayers in terms of like poems, that kind of prayer anymore. In terms of other prayer, as I mentioned, I was raised with some Quaker influence, and what we did, I would call magic. It's a term that I would use, but the Quakers probably would call it prayer. But a tradition that was in my family that came from them was holding someone in the light. And they would sit in a circle and visualize, literally, having the person in the middle of the circle surrounded by light. And I was taught to, the word that my father actually used was prayer. He said, let me teach you the way that I pray, because my mother was a Christian. And so I had, I had exposure to some Christianity. She was a Methodist. She was raised Lutheran and became a Methodist later. That of what prayer was for Christians. So my father taught me what prayer was for him, and it was visualizing sending energy to people, sending love, and it really coming from, I keep doing this because there's a very physical feeling that accompanies it. And what is my opinion about somebody who is not out of the broom closet, or but not fully outed themselves, incorporating prayer into their practice? Cool. I mean, I think that if something works for you, one of the things I really, really believe about paganism in general is that, at least many forms of paganism, not all forms of paganism, is that it's about finding something that really works for you. I don't personally believe that there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. So if it works for you, great. If it's meaningful for you, great. If it speaks to you in the way that you need, the way that you're looking for, is it reaching, is it going towards the goals that you have? Great. Is it honoring some of your more recent ancestors who perhaps were a particular religion? It doesn't just have to be Christianity. We could go to the other Abrahamic religions, or any of the other ones that use prayer. You could be honoring your ancestors through incorporating that into your practice. There's so many different things you can do. And on the last part about being incorporated for any age, I think there's a lot of value in children's media, right? In the songs that we tell to our children, the poems that we tell to them, the stories, because we all were children, and we've grown into adults, but that part of us is never really lost, I don't think. Or at least hope they're not lost, and if they are, it might be helpful to try and re-find our inner child, as to say. That made sense, as to say. So yeah, that is prayer. Summary, I think that prayer really depends on each person's definition. And if your definition is something that, the thing that is your definition works in your practice, works for you, then go for it. Who am I to tell you not to? So, you guys have a great week, and take care.